America has turned into a real-life version of the X-Files, seeming to be in a collective meltdown after shooting down a number of unidentified flying objects from its skies over the past week. It has even had to downplay fears of an imminent alien invasion.
I just wanted to make sure we address this from the White House. I know there have been questions and concerns about this, but there is no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity with these recent takedowns.
Washington dithered for days before shooting down a Chinese weather balloon. Yet it now seems to be trigger-happy as it blasts any object it sees as a potential threat. But the timing has aroused suspicion, coming soon after Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh alleged that the US blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. A former US intelligence whistleblower suggests that UFO sightings are often used as a distraction.
It's not aliens. I wish it were aliens, but it's not aliens. It's just the old engineered panic, an attractive nuisance ensuring national security reporters get assigned to investigate balloon bull rather than budgets or bombings, a la Nord Stream. Until next time.
And the developments have been greeted with mockery and skepticism.
Don't worry, just some alien friends of mine stopping by.
While a former FBI agent with top-level security clearance insists that the latest sightings could be part of a false flag alien invasion.
Military officials that are working with the cabal because they really need to get the fear up, to get back on the map with this fake alien invasion. And we're going to see a lot more politicians start supporting the Tic Tacs and the UAPs.
Hersh has predictably been dismissed as a crank and the story of fantasy, but it is just the latest evidence that points the finger of suspicion at Washington, including comments from senior US officials and the president himself.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2.
Like you, I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
During the 1950s and 1960s, a spate of UFOs was spotted over the US, leading to conspiracy theories about an imminent invasion. Roswell became a haven for conspiracy theorists and cranks, convinced that aliens were being experimented on there, with a trove of articles and mysterious footage circulating. Hundreds of Hollywood movies were made, in part to keep the US public fearful of the Soviet Union, with the UFO phenomena deeply rooted in anti-communism. Most infamously, panic ensued after a 1938 radio broadcast of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight.
But it later transpired that there was a simpler explanation for many of the unexplained phenomena. The Pentagon was conducting covert experiments with new military technology and spy planes. And the CIA admitted to planting fake stories to make people believe that they were UFOs.
Over half of all UFO reports from the late 1950s through the 1960s were accounted for by manned reconnaissance flights. This led the Air Force to make misleading and deceptive statements to the public in order to allay public fears and to protect an extraordinarily sensitive national security project.
One journalist claims that the latest UFO scare is a psyop aimed at softening up public support for increased military spending as part of a new Cold War against China and Russia.
The UFO stories all over corporate media are being pushed heavily by the US military and spy agencies. Looking back at history, this looks like a psychological operations to hide new experimental technology and/or manufacture consent for increased military budgets and a new arms race with China-Russia. It is known that the US has invested in, with then US President Donald Trump's space fleet widely mocked at the time.
The Pentagon has admitted that it is expanding its space program, with the United States Space Force officially becoming the sixth branch of the US military in December 2019. In other words, spying. But now the focus has pivoted to China, Washington's new global rival. Similar tactics are being deployed to scare the public and convince them that Beijing is a threat to the American way of life.
If I could communicate one thing to the American people from this unique vantage point, it is that the People's Republic of China poses the greatest threat to America today, and the greatest threat to democracy and freedom worldwide since World War II.
It is also gaining traction amongst gung-ho Republicans who have long baited US President Joe Biden and the Democrats for being weak on China. Some of them are predicting, even perhaps hoping for a war with China, which is of course surrounded by hundreds of US military bases. As for the UFOs, well, as Mulder and Scully would say, the truth is out there somewhere. Not in a galaxy far, far away, but closer to home.
Governments love to divert and confuse. And here we have big tech. We have these sock puppet media that is just connected and acting as a proxy through shadow government and invisible government, deep state, whatever you want to call it. It's a mishmash. It's a ball of string that's knotted up, and it's so complicated. But here's the best part. The best part is we just love to sit back and say, this is terrific. Is this a UFO? A balloon is not an alien craft. My God, what are we talking about? But then the other day, somebody used the term UFO. Now, that was a term of art. Why did they say that? They didn't say an unnamed craft. And then you have this extremely vague, this people in the military and White House spokesmen. Well, we're not saying it's a UFO. We're not really sure. Deliberately baiting people. But if you think this is diverting the American people and the media from subjects they don't care about in the first place, I could take you to Times Square, a block from here, and ask 1,000 people, do you know what Nord Stream 2 is? They'd say, who? Nord Stream, I've got all their albums. They don't know what you're talking about.